EJ Speed signs with the Houston Texans, 1 year, $5 million contract, off-ball linebacker. Let's watch some highlights of him. 1 year deal worth up to $5 million with some incentives. He comes via the Colts, where he's been for the last 6 seasons. Wasn't a full-time starter until the last couple of years, and this is where it gets really interesting because as a Texans fan, you notice him a lot. He started off as a really good special teams player. He was played situationally for his first 4 years. These last couple of years, he gets a bunch of starts. And he continued to make a bunch of plays. He had 142 tackles last year, 7 tackles for a loss. At one point, he was leading the NFL in run stops by a linebacker. So he shows up in the backfield. He just, as a full-time starter, wasn't as consistent, not as good in pass coverage as his athleticism might suggest. But for a guy that's been in the league 6 years, it's kind of weird, but I think very true. There's upside here. His linebackers coach for the last 3 years was Richard Smith, formerly of Houston Texans defensive coordinator, notoriety. You remember the first 3 years that D'Amico Ryans was in the league, Richard Smith was his defensive coordinator. I'm sure they perhaps had some conversations about EJ Speed. He also has had a couple social media run-ins with CJ Stroud. We'll address that in a little bit. He and CJ are good friends. Their families are friends, but things got saucy in social media last year. The podcasting linebackers of Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, kind of a disappointment last year for the Colts. But I think I'm really intrigued to see what D'Amico Ryans can do with EJ Speed. We've seen the glow up that he can give to a guy like Christian Harris when he's healthy. Henry To'oTo'o and his progression from his first year to his second year was way above and beyond what I would have expected. And then, of course, Azeez Al-Shire, early in his career as an undrafted rookie free agent, got a lot of good tutelage from D'Amico Ryans. And then, of course, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. We've got a history now here with the Texans of guys signing 1 year prove-it contracts. And that's why, look, EJ Speed was the starter the last 2 years, made a lot of flash plays, but also got a 1 year, $5 million contract in free agencies, a kind of a third-tier free agent. I'm excited about this. I know a lot of people have read into this, and understandably so, that, okay, this puts Christian Harris on notice. I don't think it puts anybody on notice. I think it's in line with D'Amico's strategy of A, wanting to get athletes on the field, and B, having competition all the time. If you look at the depth chart right now, Henry To'oTo'o, Azeez Al-Shire, Christian Harris would be the 3 guys who are already there. EJ Speed, I think, is going to compete for time. If he takes a bump up, he may compete for starting time. We'll see. Jake Hansen, who kind of in line with EJ Speed, makes a lot of plays with his speed and his athleticism, but Jake Hansen isn't a complete linebacker yet. And then Jamal Hill's still a project that I think has a lot of promise, but was very raw and needed time. Neiman, the free agent that they signed, I think it's going to be a really, really competitive group, and I'm excited about that. As far as the CJ Stroud stuff, remember, this was the first adulation before things turned ugly in the offseason last year on the In the Trenches podcast, which Zaire Franklin runs and had EJ Speed on all the time. This was EJ Speed talking about Zaire Franklin. It's a really, really good clip. I had to do some editing to clean it up, though.
He won't even be looking at the read. And then he got about one more look before it get ugly for him. And then he look at your guy and you didn't plaster like, got your ass. And then this motherfucker look somewhere else and throw the ball for a completion. You like, nah.
That's what I like about CJ the most.
That's your third read. You know how degrading that is for a quarterback to hit his third read?
Yeah, we played that drop on Payne and Prendergast a lot. You know how degrading that is for a quarterback to hit his third read. So I've liked EJ Speed for his upside and his potential. I thought this year might have been the year that he really poured it on. And I think he still does have that potential. So he's going to be going into year 7. I don't want to get over the moon about what he may or may not be. I just think there's genuine potential there, and I think that compared to the last 3 years, in the last 2 years when he's been a starter, it's been with a linebackers coach and on a defense that wasn't doing its best work. So put him in this environment. The other part of the linebacking core right now is, remember, since D'Amico's gotten here, we've had at least one linebacker a year miss time due to suspension for unnecessary roughness. So between that and injuries like to Christian Harris, I think this is a really smart signing. I think this is something that you can totally see nothing but upside with. At the very least, situationally, he's going to give you opportunities for either blitzing and making plays in the backfield, special teams play, everything else like that. And I know that there were other teams, the Cowboys and somebody else, were in on EJ Speed. I'm guessing that part of his decision was, hey, I've seen what guys do when they go, and the defensive tackle version of it is, hey, Sheldon Rankins played 1 year with the Texans, got a much better offer the next year in Cincinnati than he'd gotten before he came to the Texans, and he's hoping for something like that. Texans have already also demonstrated a willingness to give guys a bump, like Dalton Schultz, for better or for worse. If you come in and you play well, they'll sign you to a longer term deal. So I'm really excited about this. I don't want to get ahead of myself and make predictions about just what he can and cannot do, but there is upside there. And for $5 million, up to $5 million with incentives, I think it's a really good deal. His contract seems to favor starting, $1 million bonus for playtime goals. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure exactly what you mean about how it favors starting. You don't give a guy a 1 year, $5 million deal and pencil him in as a starter on day one. So it's not that, like, he is where he is in free agency based on his play last year. So I think this is competition. I don't think To'o or Harris has a leg up on him. I don't think he has a leg up on those guys. I think the only guy that you could set in stone as a day one starter when they line up in nickel with two linebackers would be Azeez Elshire. And then after that, it's just going to be a wide open competition. Blake Cashman, good point. Yeah, you know what? Sideline Sarah, really good point, because Blake Cashman was a guy that was known as a special teamer. He couldn't stay healthy in various other places, but really put his best foot forward with the Texans. That's a really good point there. Yeah. Defense is very, very loaded. And I think, again, if you get 20 plays a game out of him, if you get 65, I think you're going to get the best version of EJ Speed. In 2022, he only played, I want to say, around 400 snaps or so, or 500 snaps. So when they used him 20 or 30 snaps per game, he did really, really well. So when they picked and chose which moments to use him, he did really well as a linebacker. It was just making that adjustment to being a 3-down guy. That was where it was kind of tough. Also, in having the last name Speed, he almost had no choice but to be fast, because otherwise, it's a bigger disappointment when you have a name like Speed and you're not fast. It's like if you're named Millhouse and you're an idiot.
Behold gravity in all its glory.
Yeah, you can't be named Speed and be slow, and you can't have a nerdy appearance and then not actually be smart like Millhouse. So I'm excited about this. I look forward to some of these other marginal moves. I think this one might end up. This could have really good upside. The downside is that you get a guy who's a really good special teams player and a very good situational player, and I don't really see a whole lot of downside to this. I really do see this as the Texans' defense paying off on the reputation they've earned over the last couple of years. Plus, it's kind of fun to be a gangsta, you know? You come in, you want to go into the Cowboys? The Cowboys are the ever-present Millhouse of the NFL. They're always the expectations in the appearance are just not, even in the regular season when they do well, are not what the PR would suggest that they are. Whereas the Texans' defense is bona fide. Then you go on and you can go play with a bunch of other badasses that just love playing football. So really happy for it. I'm going to do a couple of the mock draft reactions a little bit later today. So thanks, everybody. Like, subscribe, all that junk. Appreciate it.